Hi, my name is Ashlesha and I'm from Amrita Bhoomi, which is an agroecology training center located in the southern Indian state of Karnataka. This is a center where we carry out trainings on agroecology for youth, for women and for men, and it is linked to the global peasant movement La Via Campesina. Now, Amrit Bhoomi is involved in a number of alternatives. For example, it's part of an agroecology movement, and ever since COVID, it has also set up a direct marketing effort between agroecology farmers and urban consumers. But very interestingly, one very important alternative that I want to highlight in this presentation is that of women's collective farming. And through this presentation, I really hope to highlight the question of gender justice in this very important conversation about food alternatives. The majority of the work in agriculture in our country is done by women. About 80% of farm work is done by women, yet women own under 10% of land. And because women don't own land, because women are landless, they're not considered to be farmers in the conventional sense. They are mostly agricultural laborers. Because they don't own land, they don't have access to entitlements, they don't have access to state support, such as extension, such as marketing, such as subsidies. And there's also a gender wage differential. So the situation of women farmers, women in general in agriculture, is one where they are at a marginalized position. So I'd like to begin this presentation by this very provocative quote by feminist activists who say, if modernization transformed agricultural gender relations and removed women from decision making, then one might ask how alternatives like agroecology are creating more power for women. And yes, this is a very important question, and oftentimes we find that there are excellent alternatives out there, but they might not be engaging with this very important question of gender and how to ensure that the benefits of agroecology reach everybody and empower the most marginalized. So this is a group of women. In the image you can see about 14 women. All of them are landless women. They come from what we call the historically oppressed castes in India. And these are castes that have been denied access to land. They have always worked as landless laborers. Many of these women are old, they are uneducated, they are single. By single, I mean that they are divorced or abandoned or widowed, and they're responsible as single women for their household. And so there's a lot of intersectionality at play here. We can see that, their caste, their gender, their education, their single status, all of these together define their marginal position in India's agrarian society. Now, these women worked as daily wage laborers, but they lost their jobs during COVID, like many other rural laborers. And so this was an opportunity where activists at Amrita Bhoomi thought, why not initiate this experiment where women, particularly landless women, access a piece of land and cultivate it collectively and learn how to engage in collective farming. So this is how this project started. The first problem that this group faced was how to access land. And the second problem that they faced is how to conduct the farming and how to access the know-how around agroecological farming. So we were fortunate that Amrita Bhoomi had additional land that they were able to lease out at a very favorable and non-extractive rate to this women's group. And the feminist activists at Amrita Bhoomi have been providing a lot of day-to-day hand-holding support. I think this is one of the key lessons that we are drawing now, is that women cannot automatically start farming just because they have land. They need support in terms of seed saving, pesticides, management, understanding the agroecological processes at their farm. So all this day-to-day farmer training is conducted through other farmers and through technicians. The group is sharing their profits, and they are also taking back the food that they produce for their own household security. They are also getting paid a daily wage. Because this is a project is at its initial stages, they don't have the level of production at the moment that is going to yield profits for them. A wage is paid to them so that they are able to sustain their work over a longer run, and then when they become independent, the hope is that they will be generating enough food or enough profit to be able to become at least partially independent. Approaches for agriculture, particularly for women, bring a lot of benefits. This is what the experience is showing us in India. The first is, the group is able to pool their resources, they're able to pool their labor, they're able to share resources. So there can be a case where one woman in the group has land, but she's not able to cultivate it by herself. And she might not have the capital, and so she might offer the land to the group, and the rest of the group will join in, and they might share their produce with the lady who owns the land. There's also a building of social cohesion, there's solidarity, there's group work, there's group support, and this has been creating a lot of meaningful work for the women as well, because they are now working for themselves. They're working for their own household security, for their own economic empowerment, and also the group work increases their bargaining power when it comes to marketing or in other, including with the government. These groups are also safe spaces for women. Oftentimes women might not feel comfortable in mixed gender spaces. They might feel marginalized. They might not have a voice in these groups, but when they work in a women-only group, they tend to be they feel much more safer to be able to express themselves and share their opinions and their hopes and dreams. While women's collective farming is at a very nascent stage in Amrita, Bhoomi, and in the state of Karnataka where we are located, it has already attained massive scale in our neighboring state of Kerala. And this is because the state has played a very proactive role in supporting women's collectives, particularly around joint farming. The state provides a number of support mechanisms to the women. If women form a group, then they assist the women. Local government will assist the women to find land. They could be provided with state land, or they can play a mediator between landlords and the women's groups. In other states, such as Karnataka, it's a very big problem. Usually the landlords, the landowners are the ones who don't want to loan their land to women because they're not sure that they will be able to pay them on time, or they might harass them. This is not the case in Kerala, where the state is backing this process. At the same time, the state provides a lot of incentives, particularly if the production process is agroecological in nature. So they'll provide subsidies. Loans are also provided. Even if the land lease is informal in nature, the banks in Kerala recognize this and they offer loans and credit. Aside from this, local governments are also helping the women with extension, with marketing. So in conclusion, I'd just like to reiterate 2 or 3 key takeaways from this presentation. The first is that food alternatives like agroecology, they must think about social justice aims and how they are improving the conditions for the most marginalized groups, such as women in our case, and particularly those women who are even more disadvantaged, such as single women or older women or women from particular classes and castes. Secondly, the Indian experience is showing us that collective approaches for women have proven to be very beneficial, as they help them to access land, to build solidarity, to build their confidence, to improve their bargaining position vis-a-vis markets or landlords or even the government, and many other benefits. But this is not an easy process, and the women have faced a lot of resistance and impediments. Oftentimes the impediments come from landlords or also from their own families and communities who have very patriarchal attitudes. And finally, such efforts require that social movements and NGOs play a supportive and hand-holding role, at least for the initial stages, and even more importantly, that the state must play a proactive role in order for such approaches to really succeed in the long run.